Bag, a real-life comedy podcast designed to lighten you up, make you laugh, and get you off your ass. Now that's Kristen being Kristen. Are you freaking kidding me? Start the show!
Okay, everyone, it's another episode of Chicken in the Bag podcast. Today is going to be a fun one. If anybody is out there trying to either get behind the camera, in front of the camera, or a little bit of both, then this is the show for you. Today, we're going to be talking to Joseph Bezenek. He's an actor, a filmmaker, a little bit of an entrepreneur. So I'm going to get him in here and we will get this show started. Let's see, I got to unmute you. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I'm so good, Kristen. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, no, I'm so excited to have you. So I stumbled upon you, I think through Instagram, and I was like really inspired by your story. We had a little chance to chat a little bit ahead of time, and you've kind of done a lot of different things. We also want to get into a little bit of the bus remodel, I think, right? That's pretty cool. So Joseph, you've been in front of the camera, behind the camera. What came first? I'd love for which one first.
Honestly, actually, when I was 6 years old, me and my cousin, Forrest, which is what I named my company after, Forrest Films, we started a show called The Forrest Show. And it was just me and him with our VHS camera making Star Wars movies. And we started a show called The Forrest Show where we just got on the camera and did like our own little TV show hosting things. So that was like our hobby, like some people threw the ball around, which I did that too. But that's what we did after school is we just made movies. So it was only natural that once I got into high school and I was like, well, shit, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I was like, well, I don't really want to like be normal. So let's just do something way more fun and exciting. And so I started thinking about the idea of diving into theater as an actor and doing it professionally so that I could get into film. And I wanted to follow Hugh Jackman's road where he did theater first, Broadway, and then got himself into some of the greatest moments on camera we've seen. So, yeah, so that's where it all started. I owe it to him. So that's why when I was in college and I started my company, then I was like, well, what am I going to name this thing? And so I went with the Forrest Films.
I love that because I was going to ask you like where the Forrest came from.
Yeah.
That's so cool because I think, okay, there we go, Forrest Films. So Bess, that's so cool because I think I was a creative kid too. I think it's so great now. Kids today have such an advantage because, technologies move so quickly. These kids are editing, they're videotaping. It's mind blowing what these little kids can do. And I'm over here trying to edit one video like, damn it, this thing's so goddamn long. So I think that's so cool that you started off loving it and you still got to do it. And I love the fact that, I think there must be something about being behind, like learning the acting side of it that probably really helps when you go to filming and other actors. Now that you're doing it in front of, behind the camera, what do you have a preference of what you kind of like?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I haven't gotten to act on film in a couple of years now. And I get to that next month. After this, I actually have a table read for the feature film shooting in North Dakota called The End of the Rope. That's going to be awesome. So I haven't been in front of the camera in a while, but we'll be premiering the film that I shot and directed. I didn't shoot it myself, but I directed and produced called Strung. We'll be doing that tomorrow and the next day. And, I will say behind the camera is awesome. You get to navigate everything. But making every single decision, especially as a director and producer, where you're having to decide, who you're hiring and getting schedules lined up, it's a lot on the table when you have to still try and access that artistic mind. So I'm realizing that, as much as it's nice to be behind the camera, that's my pup, as nice to be behind the camera and make all the decisions, I'm really looking forward to just having my own character who's just this crazy, crazy dude. And that's my boundaries from there. That's it. But they say you go back and forth. When you're directing, you want to go act. When you're acting, you want to direct if you've done both. So grass is always greener, right?
Oh, 100%. But I think that's so great that you have, such an accomplishment of doing both. You've done a lot of things. I was checking out, I was blown away by how much stuff you have done. And then also I want to talk a little bit about Strung because I watched the trailer and I'm really curious about it. I would love to see it. So I hope I get the opportunity that it gets to be put out in more theaters and people get to see it. But you guys did really well for like a first time, director debut with you directed it with a friend, correct? You guys were kind of co-directors?
Yep. My best buddy in college. You got it.
Okay. And also a lot of accolades. It seemed like it was really well received at the LA Film Awards, the best young actor, you guys got the honorable mention. That must be unbelievable, kind of get it in there and actually say, we're going to make this film and then actually have people actually receive it well and actually have some of the actors actually be known for it. What did that feel like?
You know, that is definitely the reward of creating as a director or a producer, because it's looking into a crowd basically, or looking into a slew of a tapestry and trying to figure out how to get it to go together in a way that's it's going to be as best as it possibly can. You know, you're helping each individual shine more than they realized they could. And so exactly, like when we first started getting awards, I mean, of course, obviously it was an honor, and I'm still kind of soaking that up, that I've been getting a couple of directing awards, but I think it's almost, in some ways, it's more exciting to have the actors win awards, because yes, of course, that's their doing, but it's also because we worked as a team together, because me and Ryan as co-directors were able to get the best performance out of these actors. And I mean, the kid, he won Best Young Actor of the Year, and he's 9, and it was his first film, you know?
It's unbelievable.
It really is.
You know, one of the things I think is so cool about it too that I want to talk to you, I mean, the story has to do with addiction, right?
Yes.
And I think that that's such a big problem in this country, and a lot of people have kind of like struggled with it. And I think it was really nice that you guys kind of give information about like addiction hotlines and something like that when you were describing it on your Forest Films page. You know, I think the person who wrote it, how did you find the person who wrote that, and how did you wind up collaborating that? Because that's what I'm kind of curious about, because I think it kind of approaches it from a different point of view, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the funny thing, is like, when you haven't made anything before, the first steps to do that is very difficult. So that's why you find that a lot of people end up making things with their friends or with people that they know. And so me and Jeremy Darling actually met. We were auditioning for a commercial together. It was like a brother doing like a cookout thing, and we were like, you know, just like weird, funny bros cooking out brats or something like that. And so we hit it off, and we became friends. And then when it came to, after a long road of wanting to produce my own work, I remembered that he talked about stories that he had written, and I was collecting different scripts and screenplays from different prospects, and I was like, Jeremy, send me the stories that you have. And so me and Ryan and my other producer Shields, we looked at his stories, and we found one in particular that really hit home, and that dealt with addiction. And Jeremy works with addiction all the time. He started an organization called the Salvage Project, where he goes to prisons and sings to them and talks with them, and he's done a variety of different work with recovery and things like that. So, you know, his experience goes deep, and so when he's artistically expressing these stories for these individuals that are struggling, they come from, you know, endowment from many different moments in his life. And I mean, he's like, I always say he's like the closest person to Jesus I've ever met, because his storytelling abilities are just outrageous. He'll make you believe anything. You're just like, wow, it's, whenever it comes out of his mouth, it's amazing. So it's only fitting that, you know, we ended up picking a story that he actually ended up starring in, and then putting his kid in there too. It's like, it's really quite special. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that we met. And now, I mean, we always knew when we met that we had big things ahead of us. And that, I think, is a big thing for a lot of people. You know, those people that you meet, you know, even you, Kristen, like it's like instant, you hit it off, and you know that there's something gold there. You know, there's opportunities down the way. You don't know how soon or how far down the line. And for me and Jeremy, it was, I think, 4 years, you know, of knowing each other before we really did this thing. So, you know, those people that you meet, that I call them like my diamonds. I don't remember where I got it from, and I don't have much more beyond that, but they're just these special diamonds in the rough that you find. And it's not, you know, not necessarily rough, but these, you got to hold on to those and know that at some point down the line, there really is something brewing there. There's something that's in the works, especially if you keep manifesting it into existence. Every time you talk to them, oh, you know, I know we're going to do something. I know it. And it's okay if you're not doing it right there, you know, and I think right, that's the issue is with entrepreneurship. You're like, okay, well, we got to do something right now. And then if it doesn't happen, then you're like, oh, I knew it was a bust, just like every other diamond I've met. No. Everything takes time.
Takes time. I love that you say that because I think that's so important, Bez, because I think that's what a lot of people don't realize about opportunities. We're constantly coming into contact with people. I'm a bartender, so I meet all these different diamonds constantly, right? And I think that's something that I've been really enjoying about having this opportunity to talk to people on a weekly basis and meeting people through the social media community, because you meet people that have some things that you're in common, or sometimes you're cross path, and then you never know where things are going to happen. Sometimes like, oh, wow, this thing just came up. Oh, that person would be perfect. And I think a lot of people don't know how to cultivate those friendships and actually hold on to them. Like, it doesn't have to be right this second that something's going to happen. And sometimes you're like, hey, this person is good at this or whatever. And I think, through the process of creativity, I think we have these times that we really create. And then we have times where we're like, oh, this is such bullshit. And we walk away and we get frustrated by it. And we do something else to kind of, retouch into ourselves a little bit. Then we get back out to it. Because if you're creative, you have to create. You get sick of it sometimes. You get burnt out. But then that urge comes back again. Do you ever go through those phases when you've kind of taken a break?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like honestly, recently burnout has been a word that's been coming through my mind. But I think the biggest thing is really just getting this premiere underway. This film, we've had it win awards and it's been in the festival circuit for months, but nobody's seen it in person yet. It's only been online. And so there's been so much prep work for it. So I've been feeling a sense of burnout lately, but I know that just follows up right with that spark again. So, yeah. And that's really that's how you last, is that's the full. You can't get stressed. You can't get taken back by it. You can't start getting fussy about it. You gotta roll and know that there's waves of, one of my favorite quotes is, intuition is a phantom. It'll always elude you whenever you need it most. You can't, well, not necessarily always, but you can't expect it. You can't expect those things to happen. It's going to be elusive. So let it happen. And when it comes, just ride it,
Mm-hmm. I love it. I think there's a couple other things. There was something else that you guys said about in that movie. It was talking about the inner child within. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think about creative people. I think creative people have this little inner child. And I think there's so many things in society and parents that a lot of times that try to quell it out of people or push you in a different path because it's not the most path that they really want you to take. Like, I'm going to paint or I'm going to make movies. And they're always like, oh my God, how are you going to pay your bills? And I mean, I think it's so great that you got to go to college for that and really keep that child alive. How was your family about that? Was your family someone that was really supportive of it, or was it just really your own thing?
Honestly, I'm very fortunate that my parents were pretty supportive of it.
Mm-hmm.
They were worried a little bit, and honestly, now I think more than ever, they're like, they have more doubts now because it takes time, and we have ups and downs. But they're like, man, that's really not consistent. Like my 9 to 5, it's like, no, it's not. But no, when I was going and deciding to do it, to study it in college, they were very supportive. My great uncle and aunt, I'll never forget, it was at my grandpa's funeral or right before we went there. And it was my senior year of high school, and I'd officially decided I was going to go to school for theater. And he asked me what I was studying, and I said theater. And he just goes, oh, there's no money in the theater. And then he walked away, and I was like, but that was a nice little chip on my shoulder right there. It was like, dang, we're here for Grandpa's death, and you're going to give me that right now. All right.
Right. I'll be seeing you in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like,
yeah.
well, I'll show you that, and now I realize okay, he's right. There's not as much money in the theater. That's true. But there's so much more. And that's obviously why artists create is, we're artists as childs. Exactly. And it was never about the money. It's
right.
just when you get older, you're like, well, it's about the money because I want to keep being a child.
Right. Exactly. That's so true. I think that's such an interesting point because I think you said something like it takes time, right? And it's up and down, like your parents, like it's not kids. And I think that's what so many kids don't realize. I think you see all these kids that have their video cameras or their phones and they'll get these viral moments on TikTok or something else, right? And then they want to keep I think it's hard that you don't get stuck in that trap. You start chasing that, right? And I think it's so important, I know that you made a video on, I actually kind of like the TikTok videos you were making a while back because they really are just life lessons and little wisdom nuggets, but I think they're so authentic and I connect with so many of the messages that you give. And I think that's what people don't realize. If you start chasing the money or the accolades or those likes, right? You can kind of get lost on the creativity of what you really want to make. And I think that's a really hard thing that people are facing right now. I think with being in social media and the likes and the comments, you're kind of like, oh, everybody says I should do this or niche this or niche that. And that's one of the things that I think is so important, to find your own intuition of what you want to make.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that, actually. And I don't think I'm actually realizing this a little bit now as you say it. So thank you for this like little wisdom nugget, because I was doing the TikToks and I loved it and it was great. And I was sharing, I was just sharing out of a book, and I always credited the book too. It's The Daily Stoic. It's an amazing book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and my friend, we actually at that time we were reading it and then writing underneath it, because one of her friends had taught us about that. And so, yeah, I actually, it's funny you say that, because as soon as people started saying that I was like Matthew McConaughey, or, oh my gosh, it's Matthew McConaughey, as cool as that is, and I love Matthew McConaughey.
I always thought it was his voice. I was like, is this, I thought I was like maybe confused. I was like, no, this is him. And then I was like, no, is it? I wasn't sure.
I know. And it was funny too. It's coinciding with the green lights and all that stuff. So that was no doubt really awesome, right? That's a niche. It's like, oh my gosh, he's like kind of like Matthew McConaughey. And I want to do a movie with Matthew McConaughey. But as soon as that happened, as soon as I started getting put in this box, it was like, oh, he's not Bez, he's Matthew McConaughey. I stopped making TikTok videos. It's like, okay, well, now I'm kind of forced to like use a Matthew McConaughey voice. And like, I don't necessarily want to always do that. I kind of want to just use, I sound like him, but like, if I'm going to get less views because I sounded less like him in this video, that starts going through my head. Now, sure, I could have just been like, fuck it, it's cool. I'll just start making my videos and not care at all, which I definitely could have done and still could do. But at the same time, like, there is that niche where you're like, well, but then the algorithm's not going to like me anymore, and then my videos aren't going to keep going, and I'm not going to get that high, right? I'm not going to get that high, those big viral hits, and man, that's tough. And so I just had to instantly, I was like, okay, I'm just going to put that away. I don't need that anyway. It was really nice, but I'll come back to it when I'm not Matthew McConaughey.
I think that's such a good point, though, because that's what the problem is. And I think that's what I've been kind of realizing through watching other people. And I really just kind of sit back and I observe and I kind of take things in, because there's a lot of people like, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. And everyone's got an opinion how you're supposed to do things.
True.
Like, but what are you doing? Like you're telling me how to do all these things, but like, so, and I think that some people don't understand that some people just have their own gut instinct of what they actually want to do or what they like. And sometimes people don't understand, like, well, you're not making a lot of money, so what the hell are you doing it for? And it's like, well, there's a little bit more that goes to this. It's not always just about the dollars. And that's where I'm kind of at with, like, you know, just hearing the things and just, you know, having conversations and impacting and just learning. I just love hearing people's stories and just kind of giving information to other people, because maybe they can use it in their own life, and you just never know what's going to hit with a different person. And one of the things I loved on one of those videos, you talked about falling down, right? And we can get back up, but what you say out of your mouth, you can't. And I think that's so smart, because that's where we're at in the society. People just say whatever they want and think that, oh, it's no big deal. And they don't understand that, like, you can't take that stuff back once you say it.
Yep. Yeah, right. Exactly. Once it leaves the tongue, it's out. Your word is power. It's like, you're putting it into existence. So it's important that you're really careful with that tongue.
Yeah, and I think back, I know I'm a little bit older than you, and you know, if you said something to somebody, you had to like pay for whatever you said. Like, you had to back it up, or somebody might like punch you in the face if you said the wrong thing. And now today, there's just none of that. They just type it away, just don't think anything about it. And I'm like, damn, like there's no accountability for what people say. Sometimes they just feel like they can just say whatever they want. I'm like, there's another person on the side of that screen. And even though you just typed it, it's still going to affect somebody. I just think it's so funny how people just think nothing about what comes out of their mouth nowadays. They're just so free with their mouth. So yeah. I thought that was really interesting. Bez, there's another one I want to ask you about. What was it? Oh, integrity. You made a video talking about, like, you know, why do we have to explain, like, oh, let me tell you this, let me tell you that. Like, if we have to preface it with, I'm going to tell you the truth, right? Then why can't integrity and being honest? And those are some things that are so important to me. And we've kind of lost them in society a little bit. What makes them important to you?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, honestly, especially even right now with so many people falling down and not exactly being honest with certain things that are going on right now, it's like, for me, I don't know, like at the end of the day, you know, I mean, especially empaths and intuitives can sense those things instantly. And so truth is always better, and honesty is always key. And without those things, then, at the end of the day, like you're left empty handed, at the end of the day, and you don't have it anymore. And so, yeah, I mean, your word is your bond. And,
Totally.
and the thing is I think that the problem is, especially an early entrepreneur or these hot hits or riding the culture, like you can end up finding yourself dry very quickly, and you don't realize that it's important that you keep, I mean, those honesty moments are your bridges, and you're just continuing to build those. And for me, like if there's a lie, if there's an untruth, it's kind of an X,
Yeah.
because that's, I don't know, that for me is the opposite of love.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so true, because for me, I'm always brutally honest, and it's so hard because some people just aren't. They're really uncomfortable with being honest, and I don't understand, and I know that it's vulnerable or it's hard to do it, but I think the more you do it, the easier it gets, and then if everybody can just be a little bit more honest, and you can be kind about it. You don't have to always be being honest doesn't mean being an asshole. It just means telling the truth, and I think you'd save a lot of people some hurt too. Sometimes I know it'd be a little bit of a stain, but then sometimes if it's honest, and you'd stop wasting people's time sometimes and stuff like that. I think a thing that's interesting about that too, though, Bez, just the industry you're in, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of dishonest people, and there's a lot of times that, like, sometimes, for certain parts or certain things, you have to kind of do something you're not really, like, it's not your vibe. How do you deal with it personally? And, what would you give other people advice on when you're put into certain situations? Like, have you walked away from roles? Have you walked away from certain things because it just didn't feel right for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's twofold. So I think that, and it's different for everybody, but,
Right.
there was one time where I was given an opportunity to do a commercial for ketamine as like an antidepressant. And I was like, ooh, no way. No way in hell am I going to be some guy advertising that you should take ketamine for your antidepressants. It's just, in my personal opinion, in my heart, there's no way in heck that a horse tranquilizer should be something that's going to help you. Now, I'm not, everybody is, their own individual and taking their own life journey and life path. So anybody who's taking ketamine right now for their antidepressants, I'm not putting them down. Everybody has their own path. But for me, in my experience, there's no way that I could, as a person, as an artist, ever be influencing that, no matter what dollar that's going to be, because that every action that you take has karmic effect, has, outcomes, the butterfly effect. And so that was something I had to turn down. Now, however, there's commercials or photo shoots where it's like, maybe I'm not as vibey with it. It's not exactly my thing, but you got to work, you got to get your money in, you got to get your experience in, you got to think of it as another rep, another time. And, it's not that you become numb to the industry. It's that it's muscle work. You got to keep those muscles moving. So even though it might be a photo shoot for something I don't care about, at least it's not promoting like eating McDonald's fast food, right?
Right.
Like, which is another thing. Like, I've had to think about, like, would I do a McDonald's commercial? And there was a time when I first started where I was like, oh, I'll do anything to get started. And that's honestly how it felt. It was like, dude, whatever. You can't turn that down. You can't be too big like that. It's like, no, who do you think you are? It's like, no. Who do I think I am? I'm me. I'm being honest. I'm going to do what I can actually represent. And I'm not going to be a slave to the industry in that way. And I mean, that's a big reason why I left LA when I did, was because I wasn't sure that I was being as fully honest with myself as I wanted to be. And I couldn't know for sure when I was in the thick of it, and now I hope to get back to California soon. And I want to get back into the industry in that location again, because I have a whole new integrity and understanding of who I am and how to do that. But it can be really hard to find that line.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think that's great that you took the step away, because I think when you are in the thick of it, right, and things start snowballing, you're like, oh, I'll just do this. And this is what I was trying to explain to people. Sometimes like, oh, I'll just do this because then I can just choose what I want to do. And then you're like, then you got this one, like, oh, well, I'll just do this and then I'll choose, right? And then before you know it, the money's rolling. Then you're like, oh shit, dollar, So I think it's a little bit harder to pull it back, because then you start the whole lifestyle. So I definitely think that you have to kind of know yourself if you're going to get into certain industries. And I think it's sometimes like what you did was a good thing, because now you're like, okay, now I know what I vibe with, what I don't with. Now I have a couple more things under my belt. I could be a little bit choosier. And I think that's great. Good for you that you took that opportunity to kind of like, check in with yourself. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly too, I think like, know that is going to continue to keep happening. Like, I feel like I've really honed in and boxed myself in, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to do those things because I don't want to do them. It's like, well, that makes your life harder. You're like, well, there's no way I'm going to have to continue to make my box smaller. But then you do, because you start growing and learning more and realizing like, shit, most of the world's pretty messed up. If I'm going to do the right thing, like, damn, I'm really not going to be able to do a whole lot, huh? But you got to stick with that,
Right.
Constantly challenged with that. I mean, even leaving LA, I ended up coming back to the industry to make it, right? It was all like, well, I'm going to do this to do this. Well, I was going to open up a cocktail lounge so that I could have consistent income, so that I could get my company started. Well, no, I'm not going to do that, because I don't think that I can live with the fact that I'm going to make money off of selling booze. I don't know if I can do that. Like, maybe I can. It's still thinking, but it's like, man, and don't get me wrong, I love bartending.
No, I totally know. But I mean, there's some days that I'm kind of like, sometimes I look at people when people have problems. You're like, oh my God, am I part of the problem?
It's like, oh, but right. And so exactly, right. You're constantly going to be faced with these things, and pick and choose your battles, right? Like, you got to work, right? You got to. It's not. You're not telling them to come. You're not telling them to have a problem or give me their problem or what have you, right? So,
no, it's definitely challenging. With the self-awareness and like the journey. I think actors, especially, they kind of go through these deep phases where they kind of, because you have to tap into characters and put yourself into different people, and a lot of them are empathetic or have these different emotional things. What did you kind of do? Was it just like you were kind of growing and learning about the world that you kind of got on like this little spiritual journey? Seems like you have a little bit of a spirituality to you. And what started that embarkment for you, like that little process?
Yeah, I mean, so, I've grown up with God in my life forever, which is wonderful. And the ideas of all of those things and how those are interwoven have thankfully been challenged and questioned as I got older. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I went to a Catholic high school. So I was in a pretty small box of understanding for what there was out there, right? Not that one thing is right or one thing is wrong, but in terms of what I had ingested and known, that was what I knew as pretty much truth and the facts. And then, I went to a liberal arts college, and you start to learn that there's so much more out there.
Right.
And so you have to start making those decisions. So bottom line, I knew that the serenity prayer, I think, is what I always come back to. And I think that this is universal, is that you're asking God or what have you for the wisdom, the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that through and through, that is really all I've been searching for, whether that's intellect, whether that's spirituality, philosophy, anthropology, astrology. All of those things can be interwoven into this character that you are and help you understand more and more about your empathy and your emotions. And so, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure where your spiritual life is at, but that too is another major component to the moralities and things that you do. I've been vegan for I eat eggs, so I'm considered abo-vegan, right?
Okay.
But there's no other animal product, and I've been that way for like 8-9 months now. Before that, I hadn't had red meat for 3 years, and those are things that just started gathering together and have started to influence more and more. And so it's like you're chipping away at this structure of your spiritual self in a way. Yeah. And it's like a big ice structure, and we're melting. It's all going to go away, and we're all going to die someday.
Right.
Let's keep it pretty and keep it nice while we're up here.
I love that. I love that prayer too, because I think it's so important. Because I think so many people today are really just getting themselves so caught up in all these things that they probably shouldn't. And I think it takes away your own inner peace, and it makes you not pay attention or focus on the things that you really, really probably should be focusing on sometimes. And it's not, you can't help it, because the way things come at you, you're like, I have to do something about this. I have to do something about this. And then before you know it, you're just like, I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to, I don't know how I'm going to do any of the things I'm supposed to do. So I know for me being an empathetic person, I have to really watch my spirit sometimes. And sometimes I'd be like, all right, I'm going to take a break from this because I know that I can only do this. And I try to make the impacts where I can make the impacts. And that's how I have to try to deal with it because, you know, there's just, like you said, there's a lot of things that aren't fair or right, you know? So I try to just have conversations and maybe people can get a little enlightenment through that. Through storytelling, Bez, is there like a movie that like, is there a story that you would love to tell someday that you have like a dream?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, yes. I had the pleasure of directing a play called Red, and it's about Mark Rothko. He was a painter in the 1950s, abstract expressionist. He would be mad if he was described as an abstract expressionist, but that's the easiest way to search him up. His story is phenomenal, and there's a play about him called Red, and my co-director now for Strung, he was in the play. It's a 2-person play, and I also got to direct my acting professor, my first main acting professor in college, as Mark Rothko, and that was one of my first directing experiences. And after, to put a long story short, after that amazing experience of telling his story, I have wanted to make it into a film because he still to this day, I mean, I bet most of the viewers don't know who Mark Rothko is, but you know Picasso for sure.
Correct.
And there was a time when Mark Rothko was going to be the highest paid painter in the entire world. And that ended up actually being the reason, most likely, that he killed himself, was because this very thing we're talking about is that he was swooned by the money. He was going to have his paintings, these murals, in the Four Seasons Hotel in New York. And they were going to surround, or not the hotel, this dining room. And it was beautiful. It was going to be amazing. He was going to be commissioned more than anybody in the world. And so he started working on these paintings. But he's an artist. And that artist side of him couldn't wait. He was like, well, no, I'm going to make it a sanctuary. I'm going to make it a temple. I'm going to make it this church. Well, then he goes to eat there for the first time. And he realizes, what the fuck?
Am I gonna put my fucking shit here?
This is the restaurant. I'm hearing chomping, and I'm hearing glasses clinking, and I'm just like, what the hell? So he's freaking out, and so he ends up making this amazing move where he calls him up and he says, "No deal. I'm not doing this thing. I'm not doing it." And so he turned down the biggest offer that there ever was at that time. Wow. But, you know, that ended up kind of spiraling him into this space where it was like, wait, what am I doing this for? And so,
what am I creating? Do I want to create? Do I not want to create? And then just kind of like this like the whole journey. Wow, that's fascinating.
You know, because we want to be the best, you know, we want to, you know, not everybody has that desire, but to a degree, you know, like I want to be known as one of the best actors and best filmmakers of all time.
Yeah.
But man, that takes time. And if I get an offer that says you're going to be the highest paid actor there ever was, that's pretty tough to turn down. That makes me think I'm the best actor of all time, but money is not everything. I don't want to put my acting scene in a restaurant. Like, they're eating, they're not paying attention.
Or having like some like I always think about that when actors or some like they make the most money for this movie and you're like, wow, really? Another movie about aliens? Did you want to make it? Not really, but it paid the bills. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this whole thing sometimes when you really get into certain things, and you know, especially when you're creative and you design things or make things or you know even film. And I think that's why sometimes people that are so super creative don't ever pursue it and they just keep it as their little passion, because I think some people don't have the power to know how to make money doing it, or sometimes they don't want it to be the money because then it might take away the passion. It's fascinating when you really think about it, because, you know, it's a really hard balance.
Yeah, it's super hard. And I think that, you know, and that is one thing still to note. On the opposite, a little bit more devil's advocate for what I just said. Like, sometimes you just got to make a movie that's just fun to make, dude. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be an Oscar winner, but a movie, one of my favorite movies I ever worked on, I'll never get to see. It's not going to be released because of certain things that happen in post-production, as films do.
Happens.
My goodness. But it was such a blast. It was a cult 80s horror film. And like, no, some of the moments were ridiculous. But that one of the funnest times I had on set, just hanging out with friends, that's going to look even scarier. Oh, that's going to look even weirder. Like, have some fun with these amazing cameras and make a movie that this niche of people are going to adore and have a
Right.
great time doing too.
Because that is a niche that people are obsessed with. Like they're into it. They're into it. So you're really giving a group of people that really like cherish that type of genre. Because I have friends that are totally into that genre and they absolutely friggin' love it. So that's really cool. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I just think that, you know, what I was hoping people got from this conversation is that, you know, creativity is always in some people, and I hope that they always go after it. But, you know, sometimes you just have to have fun with it. And then sometimes you have to check in with yourself. And if you have to take a step away, I'd rather people take a step away and, you know, get the energy going instead of like kind of falling into a darker place, because that can happen sometimes. But another thing I want to talk to you about too, Bez, is when you were in college, you know, digital market, like digital, you know, people being brands and videotaping everything has become such a way of life. And it's kind of newer. And there's so many jobs that I think for young people that they'll be in this industry that haven't even really started yet. You were kind of instrumental in your university with that type of program. Can you talk about how you kind of saw that and what that was like, kind of helping out develop a type of program for kids to learn in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's really neat. I was the student ambassador for the Arts Technologies degree program at Millikan University and helped develop that, which is now growing tremendously. And it's crazy because even at the time, I remember being like, wow, I hope I'm not swooning this university into something that isn't quite as important. But it turns out I was like already behind, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really where Forest Films, when you're at Millikan University in the honors program, the last 2 years you do a James Millikan Scholar program, which is like a huge research program. There's like amazing projects that have come out of that, including something related to penicillin. I don't know, right? But I'm like, whoa, that's big. I know the word penicillin. I got to do something big, right? So I started studying the science and the contagiousness behind video marketing and what video does. I specifically studied universities and how they brought students there and what they brought in. But who would have known that I was already just kind of tapping into the fact that like, we're all going to be marketing ourselves all the time, you know, very, very soon with video. Like, and that was the thing that I really stressed, was that it's like, it's not just photos. It's not just like blog posts. It's like, no, like specifically video, because video is moving picture. It's the most vivid form of expression that we can create in media. And there's sound. It's like movies. We're creating movies. And then sure enough, this was before Instagram had stories, you know, there was like, I'll never forget when Instagram said its stories. It was like, I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it, you know, like I knew that this is what this whole world was going to be, but you know, there's only so much you can do about it. And, but I think that it's definitely, I'm thankful for that insight, because I think that, you know, being ahead of the curve in that way, and then, you know, seeing people like Gary Vee come out and he taking that on by storm, being like, yes, I will brand myself every single day with my wine, and then everybody will know me and I'll take over the world.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, now like everybody's going to be a brand. I mean, now like everyone is branding themselves. And so now like if you know how to use a video camera, or you know how to edit, or you learn some of that stuff, I mean, it's definitely, it's a huge industry now. So that's great that now those universities have it. And that's what I try to say to parents now that are getting so mad at their kids that are playing video games. I'm like, listen, like your kids' jobs aren't even here yet. Like the next 3 to 5 years, what's going to be happening with video games and art and all this different shit is going to change so much. So I just think that that's great that universities are trying to stay with the curve, you know, stay ahead of the curve sometimes, because all these new careers are starting.
Yeah, you said something like, you know, if kids don't exactly know what they're going to do going to college, like it's okay if they don't necessarily go right away. And they start venturing into something else, because if they're not totally sure, that job might not be here in a few years. And what's funny is like, even a few years ago, somebody used to be like, oh, you know, your job's going to be taken over by robots in 10 years. And be like, nah. Now we're like, yeah.
I know this past year has been like, my son loves robots, right? And he's not in college because we take a different path, and I talk about it all the time. But the thing is, he's creative. And I was like, okay, have a little bit of time, because it's, you know, traditional school doesn't work for him. And he is obsessed with robots. And there's a company here where their robots are the ones that you see doing the dances. They do the choreographed dances, and like they move like humans. And he's just like, he wants to work there so bad. So I'm like, well, you got to get your other skill sets going. Then you can present and you actually, to get a job there, you actually present like a presentation to them. And show your, so it's not like, they're not like looking for your damn college degree. Like they're looking for like, okay, how does your brain think and what else can you do?
Yeah. You know, the younger, that's so awesome. good for you for empowering him with that, because I mean, they're way more in tune with that than we are. You know, like we got to see a lot of these changes happen, though they've happened fast. We knew what it was like before internet. So for them to just be in that, they're tapped in a way that, you know, so their creativity gets to play beyond. So, you know, let them embellish that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so great. So Bez, I'll ask you one more question as we wrap it up. What are some things that you would give? What was some advice you would give to children or teens that are looking to get into like either film or acting? Like maybe a tip for film, people that want to make videos and film, and then maybe one for the people that want to be in front of the camera.
Absolutely. So making stuff, I mean, I think it really comes down to what you want to make. There's so many different mediums out there, and there's so many different ways for you to express yourself. I honestly think, you know, I have a double-sided coin with TikTok, because TikTok is amazing, but there's, I mean, the content on there is phenomenal, right? There's so much amazing content on there, but it is pretty much free content. But it's a way for you to start kind of seeing where you can go. It's really a nice way of getting to express that in a way. Now, however, TikTok is also kind of being on camera too. So, you know, when you're making something, don't judge yourself before you make it. Just start making stuff and see what comes out and start getting feedback. And I'm terrible at receiving criticism. I'm starting to learn that about myself, which I'm quite the industry at. But you have to start getting good at that, because that's really, and obviously, you know, that comes double-sided coin, just as everything, because you don't want to be swooned and taken by just doing what everybody says. But at the same time, you know, most likely you're making art or making something to create impact. So see what kind of impact you're making. Go to the heart of what you really want to do with it. Have an objective for why you're making something. And I think that then give yourself those boundaries, like, well, I want to have this change. Okay, then start working within those boundaries.
Right.
And yeah, just see what happens, and start getting together with other people that want to make stuff. It feels so weird when you first start doing your own stuff. You feel like you're kidding yourself. I still am kidding myself right now for sure.
Yeah.
But constant ebb and flow. It's just like, you gotta, and that's kind of the fun of it, you know? So you know, think of it as experiments of what you can find. But then as far as someone who's an actor or somebody who really wants to get behind the camera or I'm sorry, in front of the camera and delve into that, there's also so many different avenues there. And I really think that if I could, I would have everybody, even if they weren't in the arts, I would have them do a year of theater in college or some kind of training program, because you learn about human expression and empathy and emotions and why we say what we say to get what we want, and what, you know, scene analysis, and you start kind of analyzing the scene that you're in life, and it can be very, very helpful. So I think that, you know, you start learning pretty quickly when you start delving into any kind of acting classes, whether or not it's for you. And yeah, I think ultimately, I always think that we're all actors. That's all we're doing. We're all pretending. I got a degree in pretend. So, you know, like, and to, you know, so you either decide we're all pretending or we're all just doing the best that we can.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true. Because I think right now, I think a lot of people are doing the best that they can. You know what I mean? And then I think with social media, I think it creates a lot of pretenders, because especially with like, and that's what I try to say with TikTok and stuff like that. I like people that, you know, I don't do much on it, because I'm still trying to find how I want to use my POV. Like, I don't really like want to do like a trend dance or recreate the same freaking thing that everybody else did, because what's the point? Yes, it's going to get a lot of views. Yes, it's going to push up the algorithm and you might get a lot of followers, but then you're just doing what the trend is.
Just contributing to a system. You're just a cog, right?
Right. And when you actually have the opportunity to be able to share a point of view or a story or share something about yourself or enlighten somebody about something. So, I mean, like, I would rather people use it for a way to really kind of create a change or an impact or find a connection. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people people want to be connected more now than ever. And I think that they don't realize it, but they really do. And that's what they're looking for. And that's what likes are. But I mean, if you were using some real information, then maybe you could actually make a real connection with somebody that could actually turn to a friendship.
And that's so much better. It's so much more worth it to really be true. Like, one of my favorite phrases is that I would rather be 9 people's favorite thing than 100 people's 9th favorite thing. And that comes from a musical. The first thing I ever got to direct, it's called Title of Show. And that is so true, that sure, like, yeah, you do the trend, and yeah, you might be number 9 on the list, right?
Right.
But if you do that one thing that nobody else is doing, you might be 9 people's absolute favorite thing. And there's only 9, maybe 9 people that saw that video, but it's their favorite freaking video. And what do you do with your favorite video? You share that with your favorite friend who probably has pretty similar favorites to you. And
Right.
so when you start developing a true contagious connection with community of people that are like-minded and like what you do.
Totally love that. I think that's such a great thing. So if anybody got anything out of this conversation with Bez, hopefully you learn to learn to believe in yourself, keep sticking at it. You're going to fall down, be thoughtful with your mouth. And it's okay to be an original because there's enough people doing the same thing. So, and it takes time to get the things that you want. Sometimes will take a little bit longer, and that's okay.
Yes.
Because I know you got so much on your plate, and I'm really excited that you're going to get back in front of the camera and do this next movie. I thank you for coming on here and sharing some of your thoughts and feelings and everything. And I'm glad that we connected. I hope everybody who is tuning in or listening enjoyed this episode. If you want to follow Bez, it is Bez Feed on Instagram. And you can kind of follow along to see if that movie will be released anywhere near you. So you could check it out because I'm sure he'd love some feedback. And I hope all of you guys have a fabulous rest of your week. And we will be back. We'll be back next week. And have a great day.
Thank you so
This
much.
episode of Chicken in a Bag is over. She's got to get back to being a mom, wife, bartender, therapist, comedian, real life stuff. But you can catch more episodes of Kristen being Kristen on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch you next time.